Hey everybody, Jason Blaha here with Ice Cream Fitness. Today I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to hit on a topic that I have never hit on before, and this is going to be a lot less to do with science and a lot more to do with my personal experience and my opinions on some matters. This is going to be a video response to a video Luimarcos did a couple of days ago. Louis, I salute you. The individual that Louis is talking about in this video, this bodybuilder happens to be a personal friend of both of ours, and we were both involved in a discussion on his Facebook the other day regarding his contest prep and him prepping for a so-called natural bodybuilding show. And hold on, I'm going to go ahead and link Louis' video right here for you guys. And like Louis did, I'm going to go ahead and leave the name of this bodybuilder out just out of respect for him and because we don't want to cause him problems within his federation or problems with other individuals, because he did not in any way put me up to this, and I don't think he put Louis up to doing anything in the video. This is just our personal opinions on the matter, and I very much agree with Louis on this. And just like he did, because we can't publish copyrighted pictures from the show, I'm going to go ahead and link you guys a couple of pictures of this bodybuilder the day after his show. I know for me, because I have a very good knowledge of what can be obtained naturally and what can't. I've been around bodybuilding for probably around 17 years. I've seen the different physiques that different types of drugs and levels of drug use can produce. I've seen what kind of the genetic potential is for even the genetic elite. And when I saw my friend's pictures coming up to the contest, saw him just a week out or a few days out, I'm telling him, since this is a natural show, if everyone there is actually natural, you're easily going to break the top three. You even have a good shot at winning this show. There's just no way you're not going to place. When you see an individual looking like this, then to find out that he takes 8th place at a so-called natural bodybuilding show, I had to pull some of the pictures of some of the other contestants. I just want to qualify up front that I'm not saying that everybody who competes at a high level in natural bodybuilding is using drugs, but what I am going to point out is that there are a lot of them. Probably at the higher levels, at least half or more of the guys are on something, if not using very large amounts of drugs. Look at some of the physiques and the stats of guys that he was competing against in the show, and just compare that with top level bodybuilders of previous eras. I think you're going to be really shocked if you do that. If you compare the stats and the physiques of these guys with some of the top bodybuilders in the world from just 20 years ago, back in the 90s, I think that you're going to be really, really shocked. And the reason I say that is because some people are saying, well, these guys just work hard or they have exceptional genetics. But what you're starting to see today in so-called natural bodybuilding is that you're seeing physiques today that rival or even surpass guys who were in the top 10 in the entire world. We're talking the genetic elite of the elite 20 years ago, who were pumping pretty large amounts of the best anabolic steroids and bodybuilding drugs that the world had invented or was aware of during that time period. And when you see guys who aren't necessarily going to have better genetics, we're still dealing with elite genetics. When they start developing physiques that surpass this, to me, the most logical explanation is that they have better drugs than the guys had in the 90s. These so-called natural bodybuilders are using drugs that are superior for their purposes to what was available 20 years ago, because otherwise they would not be able to surpass these physiques. And that's honestly the only thing that's really changed in bodybuilding at the top level since then. And just like Louis brought up, you got the question of, what about the drug testing? What about the drug testing? And I will tell you flat out, all BS aside, I've been around a lot of bodybuilders, a lot of powerlifters, a lot of college level athletes, and I can tell you unequivocally that it is insanely easy to be on 7 or 8 different drugs throughout the year and to pass every single one of your drug tests with flying colors. It just isn't that difficult, especially if you know they're coming. It's harder if they're random. You really have to know what you're doing, but if you know you have a drug test coming, if you ever fail a drug test that you know weeks ahead of time that you're going to have to pass, you're basically just a fucking moron. You literally didn't do even the most basic of research. And it's just like Louis is saying in his video, guys are using things like Andriol, they're using things like Clen. And actually, I haven't even heard of guys using Andriol for that. In my experience, at least the guys I knew who were going to be subjected to very, very serious drug tests, I know Anavar was very commonly used with a lot of guys I've talked to, and they'll cut it out 3 weeks because the detection time on it is 3 weeks out. And then I know turinabol is very, very commonly used because the clearance time on that one is only 1 week. So if you stop taking it 1 week before your test, you don't have to cheat. You don't have to cover it. You don't have to use masking agents. You'll pass the test. And it's the same with Anavar. It has a 3-week clearance time. If you stop taking it 3 weeks ago, there's a 100% chance you're going to pass your test. And this isn't even factoring in things like masking agents. This is only assuming a full panel, like Olympic style test, and they don't do that very often in powerlifting or bodybuilding because of the budgets involved. They don't have the funding nor enough interest in catching people to actually spend $3,000 or $4,000 on a drug test for every single person. And so if they did that type of test, it's going to be rare. Normally they just do what's called a T to E ratio, which is a testosterone to epitestosterone. And the people who are going to be subjected to that type of test can just take whatever drugs they want. It's irrelevant. All they have to do is bring their testosterone levels at competition day, where they're going to be tested, down to the normal range, and then they inject just enough epitestosterone to make the ratio look pretty on paper. They just use whatever they want and still pass their basic drug test, because that's generally the cheapest type of drug test. And then people make the argument of, but natural bodybuilding is built upon an ethical principle. And the reality is that natural bodybuilding has become very much like mainstream sports in some respect, to a lesser degree. We know that in mainstream sports, any professional sport where there's medals involved or large amounts of money involved, you're not going to find anybody clean anymore. That isn't a judgment on my part. I'm just keeping it real. That is the reality that we live with. It's been this way since before I was born, since before guys like Louis were born. It's been this way for a very long time. You haven't had clean Olympic athletes. You haven't had clean NFL players. You haven't had this in many decades. This is something that has gone away forever. You will never get back. And what you see as a result of that, you see some of these sports popping up like natural bodybuilding and drug-free powerlifting in an attempt to create a niche for naturals. But the problem becomes is that the moment you start having magazine interviews, you give people any sort of publicity for it, or there becomes sponsorship dollars involved, when that happens, the moment that happens, you're going to lose that integrity. It is going to go away. And the guys who really do have integrity are not going to be winning anymore. When it is that easy to cheat on the drug tests with 100% certainty for anybody who knows what they're doing, and there becomes a financial incentive, by default, the ethical people are no longer going to win. It's just the way it is. They're not going to be able to compete at the very highest levels, just like we saw with my friend in that show. By that same token, even I today personally know guys who compete in drug-tested events who use steroids and pass their test. I personally have friends who do this. I know people who do this. It is far more common than most people realize, even at the level where there are no cash prizes and you get nothing more than a trophy. You would be absolutely shocked at how much drug use occurs at that level, and it's just the way it is. And the only reason I bring some of this up is because, one, this was a personal friend of mine and I kind of feel bad for him, and I saw Louis do a video on it, and I had been part of the conversations with Louis and this guy leading up to his show, and I was really excited for him, and I felt really bad when he took 8th place. And the other reason I bring that up is that I think it's important for the younger generation coming up who are observing the natural bodybuilding scene, that they don't get false expectations as to what they're going to be able to achieve. Because the reality of it is that many of these natural bodybuilding heroes, and a lot of the younger guys who have this idealistic view about natural bodybuilding and what they're going to be able to achieve, they think that maybe if they have good genetics and enough hard work, they'll be able to achieve that. And the reality is that the person they're looking up to as a natural bodybuilding hero isn't a natural bodybuilder, and it sets an unrealistic expectation. I've just been around too much of it, and I've known too many of these types of guys over the years, and in my experience, when they're talking with certain people, they're all about the doing it natural and the ethical. And then when you chat with them in private and it's just the guys, then it's actually quite another story. And that's just my experience on it. That's just my opinion on it. And that's really all I have to say on that today, guys. But hold on, let me give you guys a bicep shot. And I will talk to you next time.